Hmm. Okay. Beginning, I'm not starting all over again as I have a sore throat. I'll just start from where I left off. So, okay. According to the WHO, nearly 100 million people are pushed into extreme poverty each year because of out of pocket medical expenses. UBI doesn't prevent that, it simply delays the inevitable. They promise freedom and choice, but how can citizens choose when there are no hospitals to go, no doctors to visit, and no medicines in stock? In many African and South Asian countries, over 40% of rural area lack even one primary health center. So UBI gives people purchasing power without providing anything to purchase. Health is not a privilege, it's the foundation of progress. A sick nation cannot work, cannot learn, cannot dream. You can distribute paychecks, but you cannot build an economy on unwell bodies. History proves this beyond doubt. The UK built the National Health Service in 1948, a post war economy, broke but determined. It became the backbone of Britain's recovery. Japan achieved universal health care in 1961 when its per capita income was just one fifth of the US. Today, it has one of the highest life expectancies in the world. Even Sri Lanka, with a GDP lower than many African nations, invested early in free healthcare and achieved infant mortality rates comparable to developed countries. Not one country, not one has achieved prosperity through UBI before securing healthcare. Because prosperity never began with a paycheck, it began with a pulse. Proponents say UBI gives freedom and dignity. But what freedom exists in sickness? What dignity remains when a child dies of a fever that could have been cured with a 50 rupee antibiotic? Healthcare gives life first, and only life can exercise freedom. They argue that UBI is easier to implement. Yes, handing out cash is easy, but so is watching inflation rise and inequality deepen. The OECD found that unconditional cash transfers often cause short term consumption spikes without long term improvement in health or productivity. Because when everyone has money but infrastructure remains scarce, prices rise and the poor are pushed back when they started. Only now medicine costs more. Now let's talk about priorities. In resource limited economies, smart investment means saving the most lives for the least money. The World Bank reports that every dollar invested in basic health care yields up to $9 in economic growth. Preventive programs, vaccination, sanitation, maternal care cost far less than crisis management. So, when the proposition asks us to prioritize UBI, they are asking us to treat the symptoms and ignore the disease. So, today I stand firmly against this motion because universal basic income might fill wallets, but universal health care fills lives. Because salaries can wait, survival cannot. Because a living, breathing citizen is worth more than any check ever written. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for a very fine speech. Inviting second proposition. Here.
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, you're audible.
Yes, ma'am. I'll start on my self count of three, two, one. Ma'am, we need to understand right on the burden itself of this motion. It itself has first two. First, the basic needs of people. Second, their ability to choose. Right. We need to understand, ma'am. All of this debate should be focused upon this rather than going into different aspects. Talking about the basic needs itself, ma'am, we need to understand, ma'am, that not only just food and shelter, or be it any other medical need, all basic needs matter, be it a person living in extreme poverty or be it any low income family or being any person which leads to go into any survival situation. And ma'am, talking about freedom also, that was mentioned by the opposition teams itself, that having control and having choice, that also comes now as a necessity, right? For example, a person having money to decide what they need means they have the dignity, and it also has the ability of any person to prioritize their own needs, or be it a written decision of their own need in that case, right? Therefore, ma'am, basic needs are also involved in the choice of people also. Now they need to have good money in good amount to meet their basic survival in any other situation also, right? Now, ma'am, directly coming up to the rebuttal part itself, we need to understand right on this point, the opposition addressed prioritizing healthcare over everything. Healthcare is very essential, ma'am, but they are forgetting that they are making healthcare the one thing to judge a person, how they are, how they learn to manage their health, be it any in other emergency, or be it any situation that they are going through. But ma'am, they are not understanding that not everyone can even reach healthcare facilities because of the distance and resources they do not actually have in the first place. Second argument suggested by on then, that they are saying universal healthcare will help everyone equally, right? Ma'am, if you are just focusing on equal healthcare itself, like providing the same service to everyone, and you are saying this will reach everyone in that case, what doesn't guarantee you in that case the actual coverage itself? Because all the reach and access comes up to infrastructure only, and then if it is even available at that region, or that place, right? Third argument coming up on become that they presented to the motion itself, that healthcare is the most important thing after becoming a priority. That is a basic mindset of many people. Ma'am, the argument itself has a lot of problems. First, it has been ignoring other basic needs like food and shelter, and in that case, because many people are there who actually cannot even eat 3 meals a day because of not having money, as compared to any other person who has been facing health issues in that case, right? Fourth thing which was mentioned about infrastructure that they talked about. But ma'am, we need to understand all the building of hospitals and infrastructure in this stage actually needs so much money and so much resources that cannot be afforded in limited economies, and we can instead use this money for direct benefit to right of people, right? So this is the correct approach, to give them exact money, and so that they are ready for their own immediate future, right? So, ma'am, speakers also argued about that healthcare quality and good doctors, they should focus upon that. That, ma'am, are now a part of a system itself, rather than talking about giving money directly that person needs to focus upon. Ma'am, that are also there, but it takes time and so much money. Now, these things are extremely expensive, and now they will not get good service for a very long time, and then only a real benefit is reached. Another thing that was presented by the opposition was that poor families present in the country, it is all because of less money, therefore they have less ability to survive all these survival needs, because now it becomes a really aspect, and they need to get direct money, and only then basic stability is defined by that, right? Another thing that they talked about, knowledge, the healthcare systems in place. Ma'am, we have a specific segment where healthcare is already there in many places, but it is not reaching people. And why is that? Because they do not have transport money, they do not have food money, and they do not have any money to go there, right? So where this is already visible and has a clear problem scenario in like very any developing nation, right? Lastly, coming up, they also talked about healthcare as a long-term solution, like many other people. Ma'am, basic argument going from again and again, be it any long-term plan, right? So, ma'am, wrapping up with the last argument, be it any healthcare plan or be it any hospital built, that person is also still not getting at help at the end, because they cannot afford to use it at all, and there is no such way to reach it without money in their hand right now, which has motion supports. That's why, ma'am, we stand for UBI, because it is simple, it is direct, it gives people the power to choose what they need the most right now, right? Thank you, ma'am.
I thank the speaker for a very fine speech inviting second opposition. Here, here.
All right, so I'll start on a self uh, count of three. Three, two, one, I'll start. So, basic healthcare is like salt. You only realize its importance in its absence. UBI or any scheme is useless if the person who is supposed to benefit of it isn't physically fit to avail anything. The government should focus on giving unparalleled universal health care instead of providing the bare minimum in basic income. While Pandemics like COVID-19 definitely bring in a lot of grief and misery with it, but it shows how even the ultra rich community of a nation cannot buy out herd immunity. During COVID 19, the nations with the strongest public health systems, like South Korea, recovered economically faster by about 6 to 12 months compared to the ones who didn't have one. So, to deal with these problems uh, properly and effectively in the future as well, we need to focus on building resilience on a national scale uh, than just handing out a XYZ sum. And prioritizing UBI comes with the false assumption that all the money given would be spent rationally when that isn't the case often. The World Bank review of global cash transfer programs found that less than 25% of the recipients spent additional income on healthcare or education to say so. The Niti Aayog noted that there was more than 2,000 crore worth of fraudulent Aadhaar linked accounts which were indulged in these UBI schemes. The proposition would argue that through UBI, individuals can afford better food, housing, and eventually healthcare by all this. But is your UBI enough to buy out quality hospitals and clean water and air? We need to focus on making systems and not wallets. UNICEF reported that 26% of the world's population still lacks access to safe drinking water, and similar are the cases with 7 million deaths per year due to air pollution, which can only be systemized by environmental regulations. And for examples like Kenya and Madhya Pradesh, the MP experiment involved only 6,000 people in 8 villages, which shows that it is not scalable to an economy of 1.4 billion individuals. And ultimately, what we need to realize is that a mentally and physically sound population would propagate uh, productivity and would eventually erase the need for things like UBI. And it isn't the other way round. Another stat is that the Lancet Commission found that every dollar invested in healthcare returned $4 in economic growth through improved um, productivity and longer working lives. So I would like to end on the note that a healthy man has a million uh, problems, while an unhealthy individual has only one.
I thank the speaker for a very fine speech inviting a third opposition. Here, here.
Can you give me 1 minute?
I could give you 30 seconds. Is that all right?
Yes. Yes, I'm ready.
You can start.
I will begin on a self count of 3, 2, 1. The proposition claims that the universal basic income attacks the root cause of poverty, but in reality, UBI gives a band aid, not a cure. What good is that a few thousand rupees in hand when you still have to walk 30 kilometers to the nearest hospital, or if one surgery wipes out your entire savings? Without health, money has no meaning. They say universal healthcare is capital intensive. Yes, but that's because it builds systems that last. UBI money disappears month to month, but a hospital built today saves lives for generations to come. We need systems, not stipends. The proposition also stated that UBI acts as a preventive medicine, but preventive health isn't achieved through cash. It is achieved through clean water, vaccination, sanitation, and accessible clinics. And none of these can be purchased individually. They must be delivered collectively through public healthcare infrastructure. They mentioned Kenya and Madhya Pradesh pilots, but let's be honest. Those experiments involved a few thousand people in small controlled settings. Scaling that to a nation of millions collapses under fraud, inflation, and misuse. In fact, the World Bank itself found that less than 25% of UBI recipients spend their income on health or education. So, UBI assumes rational spending, an assumption that reality has repeatedly proven false. Meanwhile, healthcare spending generates long term national wealth. The Lancet Commission found that every dollar invested in healthcare returns $4 in economical growth. Because when people are healthy, they can work, study, innovate, and create new stuff. And finally, to the sequencing argument, build economic breathing room first, healthcare later. I ask, how can a sick or malnutrition citizen even participate in the economy? During COVID-19, nations with strong healthcare systems like South Korea recovered economically 6 to 12 months faster. That's proof. Healthcare isn't charity, it's the foundation of economic survival. In a resource limited economy, you don't gamble on what people might spend their cash on. You invest directly where it saves lives, restores productivity, and builds resilience. Because, Honorable Chair, a healthy population creates wealth, but no amount of wealth can buy back lost health. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for a very fine speech. With that, all constructive speeches are over. I now open the floor to POIs.
As the first speaker of opposition said that income without medicine is useless, is income not meaningless if I still cannot access medicines when I eventually fall sick?
Can you repeat?
Yeah,
Couldn't.
exactly. Could you repeat, please?
Give me a second, please. I'll rephrase my question.
Okay, so basically, his question was that in the opposition's first speech, they mentioned about basic healthcare rights, right? Basic human rights. But if I, as a person, like a XYZ person, don't have enough money to get to that specific clinic or hospital, which the opposition has been boasting around, right? So how could I basically get to there since I have no money to spend on that? This was the basic question.
Yeah, so that actually proves our point, and that's exactly why we need universal healthcare, not universal payments. If people can't afford healthcare, the answer isn't hand them cash and let the market decide their survival. The answer is to make healthcare affordable in the first place.
Actually, I would like to add the case uh, presented by the opposition is a very unrealistic one where the individual is not able to like commute. Any kind of commutation is like very affordable, and even if you forget about that, the whole point of healthcare also includes hospitals, and hospitals includes ambulances, and ambulances are free of cost if I'm not wrong. So that way they can commute in a very easy manner.
Opposition, may I rephrase my question?
I mean, if the
I wanted to ask, what if people can't afford the preconditions to the hospital visit? How would a cheap hospital even be worth it if you can't even live in your own home?
Ma'am, the question was answered itself, right, sir?
Yeah, that was what I was about to point out. Your teammate already reframed your
Right.
question, and the answer to that was already delivered by both of the speakers on the other side. So if there's any other POI, we can move forward with that.
Yeah,
My
sure, okay.
question for the proposition. The first speaker of the proposition mentioned that UBI attacks the root cause of poverty. Now, if illness is one of the biggest causes of poverty, how does giving money without health care prevent poor families into falling back into poverty due to medical bills?
If illness is the main cause of poverty, then why are 80% of bankruptcies recorded even before illness is documented?
He asked
I hope
a POI on a PO.
has the cross question, yeah.
It was a rhetorical question, basically.
Yeah.
Works. Would you still like to add something to that? Because I would like a more
Ma'am,
elaborate.
sorry, ma'am. I wasn't able to hear the question. Could
The
could she
question
please
was
just
basically
rephrase it?
about how, healthcare itself causes a lot of bankruptcies within, people or the citizens of a nation. So how does providing them money without better healthcare even valid? So, yeah, you could continue.
Okay,
And
ma'am.
from
So the basic crux of the question was that UBI is basically expensive, and the basic crux is that UBI is basically expensive, right? This was their exact point because I wasn't being able to hear the question.
No, no, that's what I'm telling you. They ask that even if you provide UBI to the people, they will healthcare is still one of the major causes of income. So even if you give them income, they'll spend it on healthcare and they'll still go bankrupt. If I'm not wrong, that was the question. That's what he answered as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Ma'am, the
I have
question is a
a
yes
question.
or no question, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Either way works.
All right, so I have a question for the proposition, especially for the first speaker, because I have.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I think he was completing the answer. Were you, Navyansh? Oh, okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, so his first line was a quote from MIT, and if I'm not wrong, MIT is in USA, and USA is by no means a limited resource nation. So, in my opinion, I mean, of course, he can quote any organization or institution he wants, but it's quite contradictory that you are quoting an opinion which is basically uh, uh, enrooted in an place which
Ma'am,
is
ma'am,
not limited resource, and
ma'am,
it defies the whole point. So yeah.
ma'am. First of all, ma'am, we need to clearly understand it is open right in which to quench the opposition doesn't has any right to question their opinion itself, right? I would request all the opposition speakers to at least ask reasonable POIs, because questioning a opinion according to their opinion is wrong. It is not right. Ma'am, we need to understand this. So I would request the honorable speaker to just rephrase this question and not ask a question according to the opinion which was mentioned by my teammate speaker. Thank you.
no, I think the opposition has a complete right to ask a POI on anything in my speech, and I shall answer it. Just give me a second. I had written the answer. Yeah, one sec.
Ma'am, just a question, ma'am. How is that in the first of all allowed?
See, what
Um,
from my knowledge, what I get is that the POI was completely about, how they can question that USA has better healthcare when it is not even a resource limited area, right? That's what you asked.
USA has a better healthcare with, ma'am.
Give me a
This
second.
I
I
mean,
just need to confirm. I understand your
the
concern as
okay,
well.
ma'am.
Let me just confirm, is
hmm.
that what they asked? Because if they asked exactly that, then the POI is valid.
I
Ma'am, the
mean, yeah, it
verbatim.
was a
Okay.
contrast. In that, I first quoted uh, his initial speech, and again, I would say that it wasn't an opinion which I said. USA is not a limited resource nation, is a fact, and that is what I am really
Oh, okay, yeah.
countering here. The first part was
So, okay, works. So what's the problem that you had in this, Pranath? Because I feel like it's a valid POI. If they mention USA in their
Ma'am, the problem which was okay, ma'am. The problem, the my honorable speaker, my friend Navyansh, they started their speech from like when he was in MIT. I believe he had seen poverty, etc. Now the question which Anag asked was basically that his opinion about MIT, being in MIT, like seeing other things like poverty itself isn't valid. Therefore, according to Anag's opinion, the thing which the hook or the speech or the starting of my friend's Navyan's speech which they mentioned, it is itself contradictory. This was their basic question, which was basically yes or no question, right? So that POI shouldn't be valid in the first place, but if the honorable judge is allowing that, I have no concerns regarding that. Thank you.
I can change my POI and ask a question to the other speaker.
give
I'm
me a second.
absolutely
It's all
okay.
right. It's all right. I
Give
have
me
an
a
answer
second.
to it. It's all
Okay,
right.
sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. The opposition is confusing national GDP and resource abundance. Resource limitation is experienced at household level, and a poor household in a rich nation has the same volatility traps as a poor household in a poor nation. UBI stabilizes that household environment first. So, my quote remains relevant because it speaks to microeconomic reality, not just macro national economics.
Okay. Am I allowed to ask another question?
Sure. One more I'll take from either side. It works.
All right. So my question is to the second speaker. He quoted in his speech that I don't remember the exact verbatim, but I do have semblance of the words. He said that many of the people are not still able to afford 3 meals a day and don't have a shelter or a roof on their head. So I would like to ask, what is the reason you need 3 meals a day for? It's to maintain a basic health, which would be sufficed by the nutrients provided by the food. And that basic health is being sufficed by our universal healthcare system. So, isn't that kind of, I mean, not even kind
Okay,
of,
sir,
it
sir,
is
sir, sir. Okay.
contradictory.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. The exact verbatim which in my speech was basically that healthcare is very costly, and even if any other people, like be it any poor or middle income country, their people don't have even basic 1 or 2 meals a day. Even though I mentioned 3 meals, people do need at least 1 or 2 meals, right? In low income and middle income countries, they don't even have that basic access to food, shelter, home, etc. But now the opposition is speaking about getting healthcare. Now if we do implement that healthcare in low and low and middle income countries, ma'am, that case it would completely fail, because people, their countries, they don't have the money itself to implement that, right? Therefore, ma'am, we should first implement this, give people basic right, give people basic shelter, and then we could go and proceed with the healthcare itself. The proposition isn't denying healthcare. We are saying that first let people live properly, right? Let people eat properly. This was the basic argument.
Is
Okay.
cross
No
questioning
more
allowed?
POIs, guys. No more POIs.
All right.
Uh, I'll now give my OA. Firstly, I'd like to mention that this was a this house would motion. So initially in a this house would motion, the proposition is expected to give me a model. All right, a model on how their case would work, and the opposition is also expected to give me a counter model or at least attack this model. But because there wasn't a model presented in the speeches themselves, so you can't really do that. So I'll give that leverage. But else, for other times, keep it in mind, this house would motions are always policy motions. That is, you need to provide a model on the government side that if this is implemented, how would it work in the future? Any questions regarding that?
No, no.
Okay. Then the verdict goes to proposition for two main reasons. Firstly, I wasn't given enough mechanism on opposition in the first place because opposition gave me two major clashes. That is, people will spend their money on healthcare itself, even if they are given UBI, which is a good clash. Okay, it is a nice argument. Secondly, they gave me an argument of it leads to a higher life expectancy, and also a third argument, which I'll explain later why the clash was, nulled out. People go into poverty due to expensive healthcare. That was the third argument given by opposition. And then I had three arguments again by proposition. Firstly, proposition told me how average household collapse before they even reach hospitals. Secondly, you can't. Oh, I'm so sorry. I said nulled out, but it was. I wanted to say that opposition won in that clash. I'll explain on that later. Secondly, proposition gave me one argument. You can't fund hospitals where households can't survive. And thirdly, they gave me one argument on UBI gives freedom. So basically, the clashes that proposition won on was firstly, UBI gives freedom. I wasn't provided enough rebuttals on that by, you know, opposition themselves because the only rebuttal they had for that is what will people do of freedom when they don't even have life to live. But to which again proposition replied that how will they get a life if they don't even have food on the table. So that clash was won by proposition. And the second clash of average household collapses before they reach hospitals, this clash was won by opposition because opposition gave a very solid argument on ambulances and how universal healthcare provides ambulances and it is actually a part of universal healthcare. So they won on that clash. The tipping point where opposition actually won was one of the rebuttals that I received. Is that basic? It was the rebuttal that basic needs matter because if a person doesn't have food on the table, what will they do of healthcare? So this was one of the rebuttals that I expected, opposition to answer that, okay, yes, tell me what will they do of healthcare if they don't have food on the table, if they don't have basic needs to survive. Because again, the status quo here is resource limited economics, which is obvious that people are really poor in that nation and they don't even have food on the table. So if I was provided sufficient information or sufficient rebuttals that, okay, this is what universal healthcare helps in and this is why it is more important than putting food on the table, I would have given the debate to opposition. But since that was not there, therefore I give this debate to proposition. Uh, I think that's it. Any more questions?
Ma'am, individual feedbacks.
Sorry?
Individual feedbacks, ma'am.
Sure. Okay, so the first speaker, right, you all are great speeches, by the way, great modulation, great speeches, everything was good. One general feedback, in future, wherever you guys debate, I would like you to mark your debates, as in label them. For example, it gets very difficult for the judge when I'm noting down, points that I have from both sides. So what I would want all of you to do is mark your arguments. Like, okay, argument one on our side is this, argument two on our side is this, and argument three on our side is this. And when you essentially tell me those arguments, I want you to go in a very certain way that goes like, okay, this is the claim of the argument, this is the heading, what the argument actually states. This is why we believe in this argument, and this is the, stat or the examples that we believe prove this argument. So essentially that includes your analysis as well, and that gives me the stats as well so that I can mark you accordingly, and also it makes a lot of the job easier for me to note everything down, right? So that actually accounts in your strategy and matter both when you're judging a debate. So is that clear? Great. So when I go to the first speech by proposition, it was a good speech. What I would want is a model for next time, especially in a this house would speech, which I already mentioned upon earlier. The rest of the speech was nicely delivered. It had good stats and everything as well. But the rest I told you, the markings of the arguments as well. The first opposition was also nice. Then again, I would want you to give me a counter model and mark everything. Also in the op speech, there was a little lack of mechanism, I felt like. Okay, so this goes for actually, this goes for both speeches of the first speakers. There was a little lack of analysis on both sides because when even the first proposition speaker gave me that average households collapse before they even reach hospitals, and this is why universal healthcare is too late. So essentially, I needed to understand this on my own, or it was given in the second speech, which was too late for me because what you said in your first speech was essentially that universal healthcare is often too late for these people. I need to know why it is too late. All right. So if I wasn't given enough mechanism for why it is too late, I would have never accounted that clash. But I did get enough mechanism for that in the second speech, so I did account for that clash, which ended up, getting in favor for you. So that's all. Uh, their speeches were again good. One mention in the rebuttals. When you guys are rebutting, especially when you're rebutting one of the major arguments that the other side has, I want you to first tell me that this is the first rebuttal I have. This is what the other side claimed to do. And this is why we believe we're false. And especially when you're doing that, this is why we believe you're false. I want you to give me at least like 3 to 4 lines of analysis that why you believe this is wrong. And also when you were answering the POI, you were answering the POI of healthcare also causes bankruptcies. Then how does giving them UBI improve that? When you were answering that POI, you gave me a one-line answer, one-line rebuttal that okay, 80% of the bankruptcies are caused by this. I want you to elaborate a little bit on that. At least give me like 2 to 3 lines of why are bankruptcies caused in the first place, and why does healthcare does not really play a big part in bankruptcies, and why are people bankrupt in the first place, right? Something upon that. So that's all I found in the speech. Great debate, guys. Any questions?
Proposition second speaker.
I think I already gave opposition second speaker. I told you to work on your rebuttals. I didn't number it as I did on the first 2 speakers because I feel like
Proposition.
yeah,
Proposition second speaker.
both the
Oh,
rebuttal
okay.
speeches that I was given, I already told you guys how I want a rebuttal speech. But still, if you want personal feedback, I'll tell you. Firstly, we decided that you'll be going for 5 minutes in which you'll be delivering the constructive part and the rebuttal part, which was great. You gave me constructive part, which tipped over a clash for you, and you gave me rebuttals as well. So when you were giving rebuttals, sorry? Okay, nothing. I thought I heard something. So, when you were giving rebuttals, right? I received 3 main rebuttals from you. Firstly, basic needs don't matter because what will a person do if they don't have food and the healthcare, which was very important. Good rebuttal. Secondly, you told me that infrastructure needs money, a lot of money. And thirdly, you told me that basic stability comes before healthcare. So essentially, when you tell me these 3 rebuttals, I want you to differentiate between them a lot. Because when you tell me that, okay, infrastructure needs money and a lot of money, I can also say that, okay, UBI needs money. Or maybe the opposition could have also said that UBI also requires a lot of money because the government still needs to give physical money to people, right? So it also requires the same amount of money. So if the opposition would have said that by mistake, or if they would have mentioned that in the debate, I wouldn't have taken this rebuttal in consideration. So I want you to provide me enough mechanism that